This beautiful day, this afternoon, I actually welcome you to this class that we have today in biology. And this class is going to focus on the backbone or the vertebral column. And when you had this class, you must have been told that animals can get classified. And of course, they fall under a kingdom called Kingdom Animalia. And this kingdom can further be able to get classified in several phyla. So you are told that we have Kingdom Animalia. And your teacher further told you that this Kingdom Animalia can further get classified into phylum Chordata. And of course, kingdom is the highest and the largest level of classification. Coming down, you have to actually move to what you call phyla. Phyla in plural and phylum in singular. Apart from Kingdom Animalia, we have other kingdoms like Kingdom Fungi, Kingdom Protoctista, Kingdom Plantae, Kingdom Monera. And apart from phylum Chordata, we also have phylum Arthropoda. And apart from phylum Arthropoda, we have phylum Nematoda. And you can as well be able to have what you call phylum Platyhelminthes. Phylum Platyhelminthes, or you can as well be able to have what you call phylum Annelida. And of course, this phylum Nematoda can have examples like the tapeworms, and this can have examples like the planarians. And we have what you call phylum Annelida, consisting of what you call the earthworms. Phylum Chordata has classes, and these classes can include, number one, class Mammalia, class Amphibia, we have class Reptilia, we have class Aves, and lastly we have class Species. Those are the 5 main classes of that kingdom. And then in that case, you can be able to have phylum Arthropoda, consisting of classes such as class Crustacea or Crustacea. We have class Chilopoda. We have class Diplopoda. On this we have class Arachnida and class Insecta. And you see, in terms of the types of what you call the skeletons that form what you call the framework onto which muscles can get attached for the purpose of support in animals, we shall focus on, one, the endoskeleton found in phylum Chordata, and the exoskeleton found in phylum Arthropoda. You have what you call the hydroskeleton that can get found in some of these animals found in this category. So we have what you call the hydroskeleton. So in this case, a skeleton is a framework onto which muscles are attached, and this provides support. A framework onto which muscles get attached for the purpose of providing support. A framework, a surface onto which muscles the tissues can get attached to provide support in animals. And of course, if I talk about an endoskeleton, then that means muscles are attached onto the surface of the skeleton. So the muscles appear to the outside while the skeleton appears to the inside. Inside. Of course, we'll talk about an endothermic reaction and an exothermic reaction. Of course, an endothermic reaction absorbs heat from the environment, while an exothermic reaction will release heat to the environment. When someone talks about an exoskeleton, for example, in some of these animals, and of course, if you look at all these organisms under this phylum Arthropoda and falling in different classes, in as far as these 5 classes are concerned, you'll realize that this skeleton appears to the outside. And of course, we are told that it gets made of a polysaccharide called chitin. And this type of skeleton, called an exoskeleton, appears to the outside while muscles are attached onto the skeleton from the inside. So the skeleton covers the body of these organisms, while the muscles are attached on those skeletons from the inside of the organism's body. And crustacea, for example, consists of what we call the lobsters, the crustaceans that may involve examples such as the crabs, the shrimps, what you call the daphnia, what we call the woodlice. Chilopoda consists of what we call the centipedes. Diplopoda will consist of what you call the millipedes. Arachnids will consist of the mite, the tick, the spider, and the scorpion. Insects are like the grasshoppers, the houseflies, the sassaflies, the butterflies, the bedbugs, the locusts, the cockroaches, and so many other examples. So if I may want to talk about the backbone or the vertebral column, I'll center my focus more on the endoskeleton. And mammals, amphibians like the newts, the toads, the salamanders, and reptiles such as the snakes, the crocodiles, will be able to have what you call an endoskeleton. Even the apes, the birds, and the pieces, the fish, will actually be able to have what you call an endoskeleton that will form what you call a surface for the attachment of muscles to provide support in these animals. And this endoskeleton, if you may pick an example of a human being, will consist of 5 very important levels. And this means that if I talk about this, I'll realize that I'll be able to focus more on what we call the axial skeleton, and the appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton will consist of the cranium, will actually consist of the facial bones. Someone will talk about the maxilla and the mandible. Someone will talk about the vertebral column. Someone will not forget to mention about, just a minute, so you have what you call the cranium, the facial bones, the maxilla, the mandible, what you call the vertebral column, and these two can also form part of what you call the facial bones, this maxilla and this mandible. And you can also be able to mention about the sternum and of course the ribs. So the cranium or the skull, the facial bones, we have what you call the maxilla, we have what you call the mandible, we have what you call the vertebral column, we have what you call the sternum, we have what you call the ribs. They form what you call the axial skeleton. And of course, the appendicular skeleton will consist of the limbs and the girdles. And if someone talks about the limbs, they'll be referring to 1, the forelimbs and the hind limbs. the girdles will consist of the pelvic girdle and the pectoral girdle. Correct. The forelimbs will basically talk about the forearms, and this can actually be able to involve the hind limb that consists of what you call the femur as the bones that you must also be able to mention here, and what you call the tibia, what you call the fibula, okay, what you call the patella or the kneecap. We have what you call metatarsals, what you call the tarsals. Yeah, so we have what you call the hind limbs, and the hind limbs will consist of several bones that I've actually just mentioned here: the patella or the kneecap, just at the knee joint. We have what you call the femur, as one of the longest bones in the body of a human being, of course the largest. The tibia that appears at the back of the hind limb, the fibula. We have what you call the metatarsals, then the tarsals. And we have what we call the calcaneus bone. And if someone talks about the forearms, that person will be referring to one, the humerus. Okay. The same person may be referring to what you call the scapula. And we have what you call the radius. We have what you call the ulna. We have what you call the wrist bones. Okay, we have what we call something else. We have what you call the carpals. We have what you call the metacarpals. Look at that. So the scapula, the humerus, the radius, the ulna, and of course we have what we call the olecranon process, and we have what we call the coracoid process that is found on the scapula. So those are just examples of the bones you can be able to mention as far as the classification that you actually have here is concerned. So the forearms can actually consist of the bones like the ulna, the radius, the scapula, the humerus, the carpals, the metacarpals, and the wrist bones. We've talked about the hind limbs consisting of the patella, the femur, the tibia, the fibula, the metatarsals, the tarsals, and of course the patella is also called the kneecap. And of course we have what we call the angle bones that create room for the articulation between the tibia and the fibula, and of course the tarsals and the metatarsals. And of course we have what you call the phalanges that just appear at the rear end of your forearm. The phalanges. Correct. Phalanges. Very good. Of course here we have what you call the toe bones. Yeah. So this is what you're supposed to have in as far as your classification is concerned. So this is what I wanted to share today, and in case of any question or clarification, please feel free to get to me through my. And by the way, for your information, before I can just end my class that we have actually had today, you should note that the girdles you are referring to here are of mainly two types. You have what you call the pelvic girdle and then the pectoral girdle. And if someone talks about the pelvic girdle, the person should be referring to what you call the hip bone. Within your waist, you have what you call the pelvic girdle or the hip bone. And of course, that hip bone or that pelvic girdle consists of three very important bones, and those bones are the ilium, okay, and we have what you call the ischium, and lastly the pubis. And of course within that region is where you can be able to actually find the obturator foramen and the acetabulum, forming part of what you call the hip bone or the pelvic girdle. So if someone talks about the pectoral girdle, you should be referring to, of course, what you actually placed here as the scapula, and of course what you call the associated bones, like what you call the coracoid process, and of course the clinoid cavity that forms part of what you call the scapula.